And welcome everybody to the Daily Space Weather Show. If you've come for the world's most comprehensive daily space weather content and most detailed solar imagery, you've come to the right place. I'm your host, Dan, aka Smash-O-Mash, bringing you yet another edition of the space weather. You may see an awesome filament eruption happening there just north of the Earth's scale toward the end of the video. Just in the past several hours, we saw a massive CME pop off. Here's SGO 171 angstroms as well. These are 24-hour videos at 30 FPS. So yeah, we got more fresh solar imagery coming at you here in just a moment. First, let's take a look at some SDO data here. There is the SDO imagery for you. That's some composite imagery. We're showing 211 angstroms in green, 304 angstroms in red, and 171 angstroms in blue. So I would attract your attention to that northern region. That depicts just today's activity. And that was, I guess, the most exciting event right there, that massive filament eruption. It did produce a coronal mass ejection. We'll let you know later if it is earthly directed. By the way, if you enjoy the content, don't forget to press the like button. If you're new to the channel, press subscribe. Thanks to everybody who has. Thanks to the Smash team. Please visit the links below the video. We've got more information coming at you about ways to help the channel out. As the eruption continues in Iceland, it continues to be a crazy, surreal landscape there. So that's what's going on. Looks like something out of a fairy tale. So if you're planning some volcanic tourism, well, you better get to Iceland quick. Multiple spatter cones there forming as new real estate gets created on the Reykjanes Peninsula. Exciting stuff. There's an overhead view, and these are the other volcanoes that are erupting. In addition to the Reykjanes Peninsula, Suminose Jima's exploded. Manam produced a 10,000-foot ash plume as it exploded. Mount Ibu, 12,000-foot ash plume. Semaru, 15,000-foot ash plume. Tenacula in the Santa Cruz Islands has been producing some more real estate with an effusive eruption. Popocatépetl going off as usual, 20,000-foot ash plume over central Mexico. Fuego in Guatemala, Nevado de Ruiz, Sangre, Revenador, and Sabancaya all blowing up. Blowing up, folks. Now, the 7 magnitude earthquake drought continues, and could we be seeing some foreshocks right now? Well, perhaps. There is one just north of Indonesia. Perhaps. A 6.4 magnitude quake that's likely to have caused quite a bit of damage there in the Java Sea. That island south of it in Indonesia there likely took some damage. Hopefully not too much destruction. And these are the rest of the quakes of a 5 and greater magnitude in the past 24 hours. So a little bit of activity there. Again, remember, folks, any earthquake can be a foreshock. Tajikistan had a 5.1. Indonesia had a 5.6. See, there's a foreshock for you. Let's hope that 6.4 wasn't a foreshock. If that's going to be a larger event, that could be unfortunate for Indonesia. That 6.4 occurred at 8:52 this morning, and you can see that pager lighting up red and yellow and orange. Not a good sign for the people associated with that earthquake. Since then, though, things have been calm. No 5 and greater magnitude earthquakes since then. The radio flux now at 198 solar flux units. 198 is the 10.7 centimeter radio flux, and Solon.info needs an update there. Should be 198, not 181, but there you go. That's the 1 year graph. The black line represents the radio flux, and the red line is the sunspot number. You should be able to see how proportional those are. High sunspot number equals high radio flux, and vice versa. Space Weather Enthusiast dashboard here forecasting some geomagnetic unrest to arrive on the 24th. Pretty sure we said that in last night's video, but watch last night's video for details about that. We don't rehash the previous day's daily space weather video. That would be redundant. Also, don't forget to check out the ESA's new data portal. Of course, if you're looking for a new higher res Enlil spiral, you can check out the Euphoria on the ESA's new space weather data portal page. Just fantastic. And it looks like the ESA disagrees there. So no CME impact there. That NOAA forecast, that could be for a coronal hole high-speed stream. So In any case, if you haven't checked out the new ESA Space Weather Portal, perhaps check that out. Next, the past 4 hours of Earth's magnetic moment from space. We show it on the regs on the channel each day. So that's what's going on there. That shows magnetohydrodynamic pressure. The model is the Space Weather Modeling Framework. If you want to read about it, go to the Geospace Magnetosphere Movies page. Scroll down to the Details tab, click on that, and there'll be a link to the Space Weather Modeling Framework. You can even download the software you like if you want to do some checks. Next, Earth's magnetic moment from the ground. And like we said last night, things subsided rather quickly. So there was a brief period, about 9 hours of geomagnetic storm conditions or so, and they subsided exactly as we forecasted. So that's just, that's elementary. Elementary, Watson, elementary. So KP index now calmed way back down to 0.67. KP 0.67 is the current state of affairs. The KP index is a global geomagnetism average. Solar wind is next, and it's pretty nominal here at the ACE. Quite slow, actually, and quite diffuse. Only 1.5 protons per cubic centimeter at 352 kilometers per second at the Discover. Another CME impact looks like it's just recently showed up there. It showed up right around 1730 Universal Time. It's pretty weak. It does have some high-speed components there, getting up a little bit over 500 kilometers per second to 511. Current conditions are more like 500 kilometers, 498. But a very diffuse solar wind now, only 0.6 protons per cubic centimeter. GOES magnetometers are next. That is the past 3 days. Let's show a 7-day chart just to give you a little more context. And a little bit of variations happening there in the outer portion of Earth's Van Allen belts. The outer portion of the outer Van Allen belts is the location of the GOES 16 and the GOES 18. They're located at about 23,500 miles of altitude. Next is our heliosphere magnetism. And it looks like Earth remains in a South Pole current sheet. We can expect that to continue for a couple days, and we are seeing some magnetic indecision happening east of the Earth. So if you see that sector boundary crossing waving back and forth, that is the sun trying to decide which magnetic polarity will win the magnetic tug of war. Next, our line of sight field plot. That depicts the solar B field in blue, polar fields in red and green for south and north respectively, and the photosphere magnetism in grayscale. That's a lot of information, and if you had to choose only one set of data to really make a lot of assumptions about the sun, that might be a good choice for you. Part of the Gong 2 data, the National Solar Observatory. Here is our line of sight coronal hole plot. And we do have some North Pole oriented coronal holes there, and again you can see magnetic indecision happening over there on the east. Again, the sun trying to decide which magnetic polarity will win out on that eastern limb. So here is our 211 angstroms wavelength. That is just the imagery from today. It's exceptionally good at showing coronal holes, and you can see quite a well-defined one there. South of the solar equator there, right moving out of the Earth strike zone. So that's a nice coronal hole. And I suspect NOAA is expecting an uptick in solar wind parameters from that, and expecting geomagnetic unrest conditions. So fingers crossed for that, all of you aurora chasers out there. That should bode well for you. Next is our sunspot scenario. We've still got over 160 sunspots. It was a little bit of a downtick since yesterday, and one new sunspot has risen in the east, but besides that, things have been pretty calm. So let's move on to our... There's some SDO imagery for you, the SDO continuum. And that sunspot south of the Earth scale there, sunspot 3615, is indeed a major solar flare player. We're also seeing some evolution of that. Looks like a new sunspot's forming there north of our Earth scale. So we may be seeing an uptick going into tomorrow, despite some setting sunspots over there in the west. So that is what's going on. And let's get to our flare probability monitor and scoreboard. All right, so let's see. Oh, first our First, our SDO magnetogram. Let's show that. That's not half bad. So like I said, a little bit of evolution happening down there below our Earth scale at Sunspot 3615. And it looks like the likelihood of solar flares is actually going up there, right as that sunspot moves into the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk. So that's pretty sweet. And let's move on to our flare probability monitor and scoreboard. So as you can see there, very high likelihood of large solar flares, including X-class events in Sunspot 3615. That is definitely the T-mass, our most active sunspot. Next, energetic particles and flares. No SEPs or solar energetic particle events. And only one M-class event for the past 24 hours. It was an M 3.8 approximately. And let's take a look at flares from our SDO 94 angstroms wavelength. So indeed, that M-class flare did come from Sunspot 3615. Don't be surprised to see more M-class flares or even X-class events. Again, right in the Earth-facing portion of the solar disk there. The likelihood of additional large flares and coronal mass ejections, including the type that could be earthly directed, is quite high. And there's another 24-hour video from you, SDO 131 angstroms. 94 and 131 are specifically formulated to view solar flares. They take 10 images per minute instead of only 2, so it's got a 5 times higher temporal resolution than the other SDO wavelengths. Moving right along to our star chart and, of course, our solar system forecast. So it's pretty lonely over on this side of the solar system, but Mercury is coming around to have a visit. Earth is currently all alone. That's where things will be in 1 week. We will have a gibbous waning moon. Next, your star chart, at least that's what's going on over our head. The moon just rose as we approach the March full moon. And of course, if you have a low horizon and clear skies and low light pollution, you might be able to see Mercury just after sunset. And next, our astronomy photo of the day, it's Phobos. Yeah, Phobos. It's the fastest satellite in the solar system. You'd be able to see it rise and set 3 times if you were on the surface of Mars. Phobos, the astronomy photo of the day. Next, the liquid sun. Yeah, the liquid sun. So I'm in the process of reading it right now. Alexander Unziker's book. Perhaps check that out if you're interested in the coming revolution in astrophysics. It's pretty serious. Is it possible that stars aren't made of gaseous plasmas? Well, check out the book. You can find links below the video to our Amazon store. Some suggested reading there, spaceware, and lots of other stuff. Amazon.com/smashomash. Next, CMEs, coronal mass ejections. And there are 58 frames from George Mason University. Are they earthly directed? Well, the answer is, I don't think so. So there's LASCO C2 and C3. And of course, the most significant event was this one coming out of the northern hemisphere. It was a pretty nice filament eruption, folks. Anyway, we'll also show stereo A. We just like to show that because that's where it's located. It's speeding away from the Earth, orbiting a little bit faster than Earth. Stereo B is going the opposite direction. And there is stereo A and its difference imagery. Now, if you are viewing the videos on a mobile device, you're using the YouTube app, you can zoom way in on the videos. It's part of the reason why we have this window up here now, as there's plenty of pixels available for you to view. So next thing we'll take a look at is our custom coronagraphs. Custom coronagraphs are pretty sweet, right? Press the like button if you enjoy the Smash News Network least busted name. in news. So there's a sweet composite SDO and the two coronagraphs all together synced up. And yeah, that CME is not Earth directed. That is way off to the north. No likely earthly directed components there. Here we've added the 193 angstroms difference imagery of 60 minutes. It'll show you some sweet extra, contrast there. And there's the equatorial zoom. Alrighty then, not half bad. So, let's move on to filaments. And we do have a number of earthly facing filaments here, actually a lot less than yesterday. There is Cerro Tololo, Chile's ground-based hydrogen alpha imagery. There it is in non-grayscale. And eyes on Sunspot 3615, folks. That sunspot right there is it's the kind of sunspot that can produce X-class flares. So, moving right along to our bonus features segment, but first, the GOES 16 SUVI. So that's what's going on. We are seeing some instability around the southern reaches of Sunspot 3615. Again, it looks like for the past 24 hours, the likelihood of solar flares, major ones like X-class events, has been going up because of the way the magnetic shear has been evolving. Good news for space weather. Here come bonus features, starting with charging hazards. We ain't got none. It's smooth sailing for satellites at the moment. No high-energy electrons building up in spacecraft. No low-energy electrons building up on spacecraft. Electron flux here is, well, there it is for the past 3 days. And back to quite low levels of electron flux. There's the one-year graph to contextualize it. It's about as low as she gets for the greater than 2 mega electron volt electron fluents. Those are measured at the F-flare from the geosynchronous orbits of the GOES 16 and GOES 18. Forecast models next. And you can see NOAA forecasted much lower levels than we got. They're expecting flat levels for the coming days. The green boxes are the forecast, the yellow diamonds are the observation. Next, the layer where it's measured, the F-flare. Courtesy of the Australian Government Bureau of Meteorology, the F-flare is at about 300 kilometers of altitude. Feel free to pause on this frame if you're not familiar with the temperatures and atmospheric layers, the penetration of electromagnetic radiation through atmospheric layers, and of course, atmospheric chemical compositions. Here's the ionosonde for the last day. And again, last night's geomagnetic storm was quite calm and only about 9 hours in length, so you won't see any major anomalies showing up in the ionosphere. We'll also show the anomalygram just in case that's Greek to you. This shows the 30-day, the anomaly from the 30-day median. High-frequency anomalies shown in blue, low-frequency anomalies shown in red. So that's what's going on. Here's the Global Ionosphere Nowcast, or WAM, the whole atmosphere model. Total electron content depicts free electrons from about 12,500 miles of altitude down to ground level. That's the space between your GPS satellite and your handset. On the right side, it shows you the maximum high-frequency radio. The maximum usable frequency for high-frequency radio transmissions. So there's your Global Ionosphere Nowcast, and we'll close out space weather with the latest magnetogram and SDO continuum. We're just going to look at Sunspot 3615 today. A prime example of beta gamma delta class sunspot. So you see the way right in here, all these magnetic fields are very close to each other. The trailing edge of that, the southern portion of it, that is where we are seeing instability happening right now. And so that is by far the most likely place for a large solar flare. Next, we'll move to meteorology because, well, space weather is pretty hard, but meteorology is pretty easy, so we throw it in as a bonus feature. Too easy to forecast the weather, folks. If you're unable to forecast your weather, it's really easy. Stay tuned. We'll include some consumer tips. So what we're looking at here is the nullschool.net's fantastic total cloud water. And we've got a lot of cloudy conditions on both coasts of the U.S. right now. Total cloud water and surface winds are what are depicted here, as a bunch of cold air from Canada has created a cold snap in eastern PA, in all of PA for that matter. So moving right along, here are our wind maps, surface winds of the eastern world shown here, followed by jet streams. Central world jet streams here. And the surface winds. Surface winds of the Americas. And our jet streams. Moving on to satellite imagery. Yes, satellite imagery. So good. So good. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Beautiful. Even more beautiful. Oh, yeah. Love it. And some heavy weather around the Gulf states at the moment. So here's our snow forecast, and we've got major snowfall coming here to kick off spring. Major snowfall there, like half of the lower 48 are going to be blanketed, especially New England and California. Some heavy snows there coming to Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. Also, Nova Scotia. Shout out to Ricky, Julian, and Bubbles. That's the next 3 days forecasted by the Euro model. And there's the GFS model, quite similar there. Euro model, GFS model for new snow for the next 3 days. Next, our weather.gov map, and look at the gale warnings up the East Coast and the Gulf and the West Coast. Some stormy seas in our harbors. So that's weather.gov's map. I don't know why it jumps around like that when I try to scroll, but whatever. We got some flood watches in the east and in Florida and some winter storm warnings. So here comes some forecasts. The GFS 72-hour pressure and precipitation is first, as a strong low forms off the coast of North Carolina and loiters. So that's where you can expect your precipitation. And speaking of which, we're going to be getting like over 3 inches here in eastern PA. Parts of California and Oregon getting 6 inches. Also parts of Florida getting 5 inches. So some heavy precipitation coming in the next couple of days. That's a 72-hour GFS accumulated precipitation forecast in inches from tropicaltidbits.com. Next, our snow forecast. And as you can see there, expecting pushing 2 feet there, or at least over a foot for most of Maine. And also most of New Hampshire and large portions of Vermont, as the ski season gets extended also for California. That's your accumulated positive snow depth change forecast for the GFS model. Nice. Last but not least, temperature anomaly forecast in degrees Celsius. And moving right along to lightning. And look at the massive lightning storm moving across the Gulf. About to strike southern Florida. Let's check for real-time lightning strikes. There it is, lightningmaps.org. It's fantastic. Looks like Miami's going to be mostly mist, but there is quite a bit of thunderstorm activity out there in the Gulf. Dag. That's not a good place to be on a boat. There's a full map from blitzaltung.org. We'll close out with U.S. Doppler radar for the lower 48, along with visible satellite and, of course, water vapor. Yes. Yes. So there is your U.S. Doppler radar. Quite stormy, especially east of the Mississippi, and especially on the western coast. Visible satellites next. And check out that low pressure there around the Louisiana-Arkansas border. You can see that counterclockwise rotation. It'll show up very well in the water vapor map also. There's the water vapor map. And once again, when your Doppler is unclear, folks, try the water vapor map. You see those orange areas? Those represent dry air, and one important thing to understand is that dry air is more massive than moist air at a given temperature and pressure. So that's something to understand in terms of how things work. Of course, pressure gradients are often responsible for precipitation. Here's your recap to close out this daily space weather video. Doppler radars first, visible satellites next, and last but not least, the water vapor map. So that's where we're closing out. So thanks for tuning in. Congratulations on realizing the channel exists. I've been your host, Dan, a.k.a. Smash-O-Mash, signing off. And may that solar wind be at your back.